Snow, I want your Michigan takes.
They're really good at basketball. I'll say this. The one thing that surprised me is how well they've been able to, I don't even know if hide's the right term, but how well Hunter Dickinson hasn't been exposed in ball screen situations. Because that was the biggest concern I had about him coming out was, in college you can get away with it a little bit better than you can in the NBA. But even when you looked at Purdue, when they'd have like Isaac Haas and those guys, ball screens in the center of the court just screwed them up at the highest level. And Michigan hasn't had that. So I've been really impressed with how they've been able to play to Hunter's strengths and not get exposed defensively because of them. And, Jawan's done a great job. His staff's done a great job. And then, the transfers have hit at the highest level for them. Yeah. And that's made a huge difference.
And John D. Brown's brought in.
Yeah. And that's the toughest thing with those fifth-year guys is that have no sweat equity in your program is getting them to buy in exactly with what you're doing and how you're doing it. And I think Jawan deserves a lot of credit for that and his management of people, which I do think is a really good NBA skill. As like Jeff, in general, I agree with you. NBA guys haven't worked, but there's one thing that NBA is an ego management job for much of it. And Jawan's applied that to college with transfers and it's worked perfectly this year.
Well, he's got no ego, though. I think he's different than like Stackhouse, right? Stackhouse has an ego. You could see it. Jawan is very even keel. And honestly, I think one of his biggest traits is, bringing on a guy like Phil Martelli, who is pretty opinionated. I think that would be fair to say. And Jawan, learns and listens and isn't a guy above where he's saying, I think I know more than you. It's I'm going to learn from you because you've done this for 30 years. I'm going to pick up whatever I can from you, whatever I can from Sadi, whatever I can from Howard Osley, and learn. And all three of those guys are so different. I love that staff for that reason.
Yeah, and I think the most credit you can give him, and Snow, this is stealing a line from you, but I think Juwan Howard knows his scouting report as a coach, right? He knows where his strengths are. And he knows where his weaknesses were, and he hired a staff that would help him fill in the gaps of what he didn't know, maybe what he wasn't great at yet, where he needed help. And I think it was really savvy how he put that together, and I think it's paying dividends.
And one thing I'll say is, especially when he got the job, I didn't have any concerns if he could coach. I really didn't, because you're in the NBA that long, you're a smart guy like he is, you can coach. And he obviously has a really good personality, so I figured he could recruit. So the questions were, would he put the effort in? The answer is absolutely yes. And then, but the biggest thing I had is there's so much more to being a college head coach than game day. It's dealing with boosters, dealing with crazy parents. When a kid wants to transfer because his girlfriend broke up with him, do two players on the team, are they going after the same chick? Whatever it may be, there's so much more to being a college head coach than game day that people don't really understand. That's where I thought hiring Phil was big, where Phil could help him with the boosters, help him with the media stuff, help him with the crap that ages college coaches like dog years. And Jawan's done a great job with that. And Jawan deserves all the credit. And I think hiring Phil was a big part of that.
I agree. I'm kind of sick of the tiers debate at this point. I think that we all kind of understand that Michigan is a very, very good basketball team. But are you... what's the best way to phrase this? Where would you situate them in terms of that conversation? I think I've gotten to the point where it's just kind of you blanketed all three and you say
somebody asked me a good question
at this point.
Dauster, somebody asked me a good question this morning, and it was an easy question to answer last year. Danny Cannell asked me on Sirius, and he said, "Would you take now Gonzaga and Baylor or the field?" And if you had said this to me 3 weeks ago, it was such an easy decision, right? It's Gonzaga, Baylor. Now, what would you do, Snow? Gonzaga, Baylor, or the field?
Just the nature of the tournament. Pretty much any question like that, I'm taking the field. Just the nature of the tournament. Now, I'm not necessarily feeling super comfortable with it, but I feel I'm playing the odds there. Because you got Michigan, you got Villanova. Is anyone going to truly count out Jay Wright? You can do that at your own risk. If Chris Holtman's guys play through contact, which was a big point of emphasis last night in his postgame, Ohio State would be up there.
We got to talk about that, by the way.
Illinois, I felt like something's been missing all year, but they still do have Mariano Rivera on their team, where if it's a close game, you're losing. So there's a lot there. If Alabama pulls a VCU when Shaka was the coach and just starts hitting 15 threes a game, 20 threes a game, you can't win. You're not winning. So to me, there's too many options beyond just to take just two teams, even if I do think those are the two best teams. And I would make Michigan really close with those two. Like, I kind of, like, if you made me guess one, I'm guessing Baylor right now, just assuming they're not completely out of whack coming off of the COVID thing. But I think they have enough time to get that figured out in the next couple weeks. But, I just think the math says you go with the field.
Yeah, and I think you also kind of undersold the fact that if you're taking the field, you also have COVID on your side, right? Like, all it takes is one positive test.
Why you're taking the field even more this year.
And just there are some actual odds out on this. Like, Bet Rivers right now has the field at minus 134 and Gonzaga and Baylor at plus 110. And the overall futures lines that you can get right now at Bet Rivers is Gonzaga is plus 275 to win the title, Baylor is plus 250, and Michigan is actually plus 450. So they keep creeping up.
Read Baylor second if they're you're wrong. Plus 350, you mean? Baylor?
No, plus Baylor plus 250.
250. And Gonzaga is plus 275?
Yes. And then Michigan is plus 450.
No, why did he read Gonzaga first then?
I didn't read them. I'm going off the top of my head, and that's the first one that I thought.
I'm surprised Baylor would be the betting favorite. I figured everyone would be Gonzaga.
You sure?
What I think happened, Snow, is that when Baylor had, there was a point where it was very clear that Baylor was the second best team, and the odds were very much skewed towards Gonzaga at that point. So I think what happened was all the money came in on Baylor, and now the books are kind of like, well, you know what? We kind of have to make sure that we don't have all of this risk and all of this exposure. So let's make sure we have no more money coming in on the Bears at this point. I think that's probably what happened. So they're just kind of overcorrecting, would be my guess. All right, you got anything on Iowa before we move on? Like, they were playing better defensively in recent weeks. They kind of got lit up last night, and I think that Hunter Dickinson really exposed the limitations in what their offense is and what Luka Garza is when he doesn't force that double, right? Their whole offense is you either give the ball to Luka and he goes one-on-one, you force a double and they go swing, 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 kick, boom, open three. And we don't have to double, it's trouble.
Yeah, for me, I just – one, if you're that just non-athletic, I'm not going to bet on you in the tournament. At the end of the day, when Baylor has the ball, who on Iowa is stopping Baylor's guards from scoring?
Nobody.
And then Baylor can get creative enough defensively where they're going to just pressure Iowa. Now, granted, CJ Frederick hasn't turned the ball over in 3 months, but he's only one guy who can handle pressure. Like Bohannon, that's not his game, especially not with his. What's he coming back from the hip or whatever it is?
2 hips.
I just think there's too many holes there that the right team can pick apart. That I just don't see Iowa making the super long run, but I guess it's possible. I haven't been totally bought in on them all year, and I'm still not.